Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to another installment of the Understanding Room. My name is Mike, and I just want to continue to welcome those who are joining us for the first time and thanking those who are continuing to watch and support us each week. Um, this week, we're going to talk about and try new things as well. Hopefully, we stay within the bracket of things that continue that you guys continually say that you like, but we want to kind of mix it up. We really want to get more in depth into a lot of things. So Odie and I have been talking, and we are going to just try something new today. We're still going to give you your history. We're still going to give you your current events and all that other stuff. But going towards the end, we're going to try a little something new. So without further ado, I got my big homie Odie on the other side. Say what's up to the people one time, Odie.
Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again. We're here excited, like we always are, wanting to give you all a little bit of knowledge, impart some knowledge if we can, and change some mindsets is a must. So hopefully you all enjoy today's session and keep joining us, keep coming back.
And like every week, we like to begin with a little bit of history. Odie came to me with a really good idea for the history piece this week. It kind of segues from last week's history. So I think one of my favorite parts of history is, everybody knows the American Civil War and, the expansion west and the history behind it, because I like the truth that comes out from it. And I mean, I'm not a fan, or I don't really particularly like what happened to the people during this time, but it fascinates me that there's so many people who come out who are still strong, who still stand out and speak against these things like we do today. And that's why I say history is very important, because if you have those leaders back then who were willing to stand up and say, hey, this isn't right, we want this, this, and this for everybody to be equal. And I don't see why it's a problem for us to do it today. So without further ado, Odie, go ahead and tell the people about what you discovered this week and brought up to me.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Sitting Bull, and how he was murdered, how hundreds of people were murdered at Wounded Knee, and we talked about the ghost stance. We said that the initial reason why the military was there is to stop the ghost stance, and how Sitting Bull wasn't even participating in the ghost stance. So now I actually want to talk about one of the biggest proponents of the ghost stance, and one of the people that started recommending the ghost stance to the Sioux Nation, and that was Chief Kicking Bear. So Chief Kicking Bear was actually had a speech to the Sioux Nation, where he was giving them and letting them know about the importance of the ghost stance. And one of the things that I found very interesting about it, as I was going through the speech, was looking at how religion really affects racism. So just for context, in the 1830s, we've spoken about before how one of the things that the European settlers were doing was trying to convert the Native Americans. We said they saw Native Americans as closer to humans as they did African American or the Africans. So instead of using them as slaves, they wanted to try to teach them about God. And so by the 1870s, 1880s, they'd already been learning about Christianity for about 50 years. And so they started combining, they started mixing what was Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, and the Great Spirit, which was, what the Sioux Nation believed was God. And I love that in his speech, Kicking Bear is telling his people about a vision he had, where he's talking to the Great Spirit, and the Great Spirit is telling him, from this point forward, the red people will be my chosen people. He says, he showed me the Great Spirit showed me the wounds in his hands, and and told me, this is what the white people have done to me. In my name, they have destroyed the world. And from this point forward, my chosen people will be the red nation. It will be the Native Americans. And it really impacted me in seeing that and hearing that, because it shows how religion, um, unfortunately, when it's meant to be good and it's meant to unite, sometimes causes these chasms between people. When you have a society, a people that simply because of their color believe that God favors them, you've got we've got a problem. We've spoken about the idea of the white Jesus and how the white Jesus, unfortunately, causes this superiority complex for white people. And here we see how, what the Sioux Nation, what Kicking Bear was trying to do was tell his people, just because you're not white doesn't mean God has forsaken you. Just because you're not white doesn't mean God doesn't favor you. Now, of course, it's a little drastic. He talks about how an evil spirit, which we can assume was Satan, comes to the great spirit Jesus while he's talking to him in the vision, and how the evil spirit tells God, I want half of the people. And God says no. And the evil spirit says, give me half of the people. And God says no. And on the third time, when the evil spirit says, give me half of the people, God says, you can take the white man. You can take the white man because they've defiled my land, they've defiled my people, and they've defiled my ideas. So take them, but you will not touch my new chosen people. And you know, the point I want to make, I'm not saying by no mean that the white man was evil. I'm not saying that the new chosen people were the red nation. What I'm saying is, whenever we involve God, whenever we involve religion, in a situation where race is also a a basis, a touch point, we need to make sure that we understand where God was coming from. I mean, if you are a Christian, if you believe in God, one of the things that I always tell Christians that are like, oh, well, we're the chosen people. No, we're not. The Bible even says, you know, one of the things that Jesus said was, you need to be a Jew to the world. We got to remember, Jesus Christ was a Jew first and foremost. In Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, it describes Jesus as honestly being unassuming. He said in the book of Isaiah, it says there was nothing in him that made him stand out. He was just a normal guy. And if he was a normal guy, normal Jewish guy in that part of the world, then he was brown with wool hair, like it describes him in Revelations. But the point of it is that the gospel says he came for everybody. So we can't allow, whether it's the white man, whether it's the white man, the white man, the red man, the black man, no matter who you think you are, we can't allow the basis of you thinking you're a chosen person of God to start dictating how you treat others. Now, before we move on, though, I did want to make sure I pointed this out also, because some people are going to say, well, why did this happen? Or I think we spoke about it last week. The people that say, well, the stupid, Indians were the ones who did these treaties for beads. That's my biggest, like, as a Native American, that is one of my biggest pet peeves when I hear that, because there never were treaties for beads. We like, that is a fake fake mentality. But I wanted to also point out what inspired the ghost dance. And the inspiration to the ghost dance was actually the white settlers, the white Americans, breaking a treaty that they had with the Sioux Nation, the Laramie Treaty of 1868. The Laramie Treaty of 1868 gave the Sioux Nation their land. And the one thing that I wanted to point out about that treaty is that in its verbiage, it promises the land will belong to the Sioux Nation for all it says till the end of time and forever. So I want those that say, well, Native Americans should not have signed treaties if they didn't want to. I want to make sure you all understand that the US government signed a treaty that gave them the land for all eternity and forever. That was in 1968. Guess what? Apparently to the US government, for all eternity and forever is only 6 years. Because in 1868. In 1874, they found gold in the Black Hills. And guess what they started doing? They started pushing the Native Americans into smaller and smaller and smaller reservations until, once again, all the land that had been given to them for all eternity and forever had been taken away. I want to make sure that we realize, I've said it before and I'll say it again. In California, the ones that were being paid to scalp people were the white man. We always see these movies where it's the Native Americans doing the scalping. No, it wasn't. In California, it was the white man that was doing the scalping. And with the Sioux Nation, it was the white man that was the aggressor. It was the white man that was encroaching in the land that had been promised and given to the Sioux Nation. And that is why they had to fight. It wasn't that, well, because I hear that all the time also. Well, the Native Americans shouldn't have fought if they had less firepower. If they knew they were going to be massacred, then they should have just gone along with it. Well, here, that's the problem though. Who goes along with being killed? If someone's trying to kill me, I'm gonna fight. If someone's encroaching in my land and pushing me back and making it harder for me to feed my family, I'm gonna fight. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I just wanted to show you guys that unfortunately, whether it's in the Middle Ages with the Crusades, whether it's us, the first settlers that came to the United States trying to get away from the religious oppression of Europe, regardless of where it is, religion has played a big part in racism. And in order to fix racism, religion has to be fixed too. Go ahead, Mr. Mike.
Absolutely, and I was going to say, it sounds like a lot of what's going on today, right? When we talk about how slavery was a thing, and when we bring up how the civil rights movement was a thing, we are told things like, "Well, your people are free now. It's over. Let it go." Or, you got your rights now. It's over. Let it go. No, it's not, because it's just like Odie said, this is what they want. They just want to be like, okay, well, here, let's just all lay down and give in to their demands and just do what they want to do. And as long as they give us the bare minimum, we're okay. No, it's not. This is why we're doing this project. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're trying to make sure that we have this open dialogue, because we want more than the bare minimum. We want to be treated just as equally as you want us to treat you. So, again, it's going back to like what Odie was saying. We're not going to lay down. We're not going to just accept it. We're going to fight. We're going to continue to fight for our just cause, our freedom, and our equality. Because until we get equality, we're not really free.
Definitely. I mean, we've seen it. We've spoken within the last 9 weeks about the struggle that slaves went through, the struggles that the Native Americans have gone through, and we still see them. I mean, last week we were talking about the systemic racism in education. We were talking about the systemic racism in law enforcement and policing. We've been talking about systemic racism, and we wanted to keep showing that it exists. We don't want people to say racism is no longer there until it really no longer is there. This week, a Republican, I don't remember if he's a senator. I think he was a senator. A black Republican senator came out and said, racism does not exist in the United States. That is a lie they're trying to tell you. And I'm not saying that he's doing it to save face or to appease his party, but I am saying that I mean, if he hasn't felt it, great. I'm glad he's never felt it. But if he's coming out and saying something that dangerous, he needs to be careful with the words he uses. And going back to the systemic racism, I wanted to talk about the systemic racism in medicine now. This is something that I have dear to my heart because, unfortunately, my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer. My mother passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2006. She spent a whole year going from doctor to doctor, being misdiagnosed. I remember there was a doctor that she went to that prescribed this depression medication. She's describing a pain in her midsection, in her abdomen, and instead of giving her tests, instead of sending her to get examined, just gave her some depression medication. And what I found was actually very surprising. So the first thing that I did is because my mother did pass away from cancer, is I looked up to the racism in amongst cancer patients, and it actually blew my mind. I was looking specifically at breast cancer, and I didn't know. I actually was unaware that a black a woman and a woman of color, any minority, a person of a minority is twice as likely to be misdiagnosed or to have the cancer be found when there's nothing else that can be done than a white American. There was a story that I read of a 60-year-old in Chicago who went to the doctor, went to her physician because there was a lump on her breast. It was misdiagnosed. Not only was it misdiagnosed, but there was no follow-up. The doctor never told her, "Hey, come back to me if it grows. Come back to me if it changes." And then to top it off, the worst part of it was that when she finally went to the hospital, they didn't even get her consent. When they finally found out it was cancer, before they even got her consent, they did a mastectomy. And to those of us of a minority that have had in our history in the United States, medical procedures done without consent, that is a big thing. So what I found is that 44% of minorities live in areas where they don't even have oncologists around. So I want you to think about that, guys. That minorities are 44% more likely than white Americans to live in an area where there's a doctor that deals with cancer, which means just because they're not around, more minorities are going to be passing away from it. When we look at that, when we see that, How can we not believe that there is a problem when it comes to race? Um, you know, uh, there was a study done in 2017 that showed that this study was done in Chicago. And again, I'm talking about breast cancer here, and it showed that a uh, an minority, a person of a minority that was found that had breast cancer was 62% more likely to die within the first 5 years of being diagnosed than a white American. Think about that. I just want you to think about that, guys. 62% more likely to die. 62%. That means out of the 100 people that die from breast cancer, 62 of them are from a minority. And the only difference is their color and their access to the right doctors. And cancer isn't the only ailment that shows that we have racism. I don't know if you guys knew. I think we might have mentioned it before, and if we haven't, from the beginning, from the inception, there's been these pseudosciences that have affected the world, that have affected us. That claimed, there was one that claimed that African Americans didn't feel pain. Um, even now, there was a study done amongst medical professionals that showed that more than 40% of medical professionals still believe that just because you're an African American, you have a higher tolerance for pain and are going to give you stronger and harder and more damaging medications just because you're black. Like, that's insane to me that these pseudosciences happened in the 1700s and 1800s, and here we are in 2021, and we still have that mentality that, oh, they don't feel as much pain as other people do. Their skin is thicker, so we need thicker needles. They're like, what? How in the world could that be? When it comes to lupus, I was completely amazed, completely surprised when I was looking into people that were afflicted by lupus, and how they have to deal with systemic racism. So again, it's almost identical to the cancer. Most About 60% of African Americans with lupus are originally misdiagnosed. They're not believed, or they're not given the tests that are required to find if you have lupus. I found that for people that have lupus, that have been diagnosed with lupus, it's twice as likely for minorities to be depressed with lupus than for white Americans to be depressed with lupus. And one of the biggest reasons for it is, again, their access to adequate medical care. Their access to adequate medical care. If you don't have a doctor that specializes in it, if you don't have a doctor that's teaching you and telling you how to deal with your lupus, with your affliction, then how can you deal with it? How can you properly, come back and say that you're okay? How can we say that we're okay? In all, and this is the last part I'll say about this, but in all, in a study that was done that had about 400 participants, a half were of minority descent, half were Americans, we found out, or it was determined, that 56% of minorities experience some type of racism when going to find medical care, whereas less than 30% of white patients said they had some type of discrimination. And by the way, out of the 30% of white patients that had discrimination, most of them, the discrimination they felt was because of their uh, monetary status, because they were poor, versus with minorities, the 56% included people that had the money for private, medical care, and people that didn't have the money for that medical care. So, unfortunately, once again, we look at the system, we look at how the system is built, and we find that people of color have to go through a harder time, have to struggle more for something that should be a basic need and should be able to be given, especially with the way we pay for insurance, especially with the way our medical system is set up in America. It should be able to be given to them as long as they're able to afford it.
I agree. I've long asked the question of, why are we so adamant about not wanting people to have health care in this country, which again relies on the question of why can't we put people's lives first? It's always some sort of political, socioeconomic thing that's going on, but when it boils right down to it, everyone deserves the same amount of care when it comes to medical, education, or any of the disparities that Odie had mentioned. And the fact that there are arguments against such things is kind of making me scratch my head, because, we all are saying how we want equality for all. We want everyone to have their fair share. But when it comes to things such as medical care and education and people being able to buy their homes and things like that, there's always some sort of pushback. There's always something that, like Odie says, we have to do, people of color or minorities have to do in order to jump extra hurdles or go over more boundaries and borders to get to, the bare minimum of what everyone else has. We're still, it's like a song that I listen to. It says, we work hard to make it from the bottom just to make it to the bottom. Like it's like out of the fire pan into the fire, and it's never enough. It's never equality. It's never the same for everyone. And like we keep saying, everyone just tells us, well, you got this, and this. So what's the problem? The problem is that there's still things happen at disproportionate rates. There are law enforcement that's pulling over and murdering people of color and minorities at higher rates than any other race. You have miseducation. You have lack of education in communities of color. You have lack of resources to get things that they can use to help them get to school and help them with their after schooling and help them with their homework and stuff. You don't have those in these neighborhoods. So this is what we're talking about. This is what we've been talking about. And it seems that no matter how many weeks we come in, we talk about it, it's the same thing. People are still looking at us and they're like, well, we don't understand. How do you not? But I got a few questions based off of the last segment that you just had. So you were talking about how different neighborhoods don't have access to certain things. Do you think that these disparities in medicine are due to the lack of facilities in the neighborhood or the lack of care from physicians?
I think it's a combination of things. And the first thing is honestly gonna be the money. Like, for example, with my mother, going back to my mother, when she, believe it or not, I maybe as an older person now, I would have sued the medical system at that time. At that time, I was a puppy. I was 19, 20 years old. I just wanted it over with. I just wanted to get it done. I didn't want to think about it anymore. But with my mother, she actually had a procedure done. They at some point they thought it was her gallbladder. So supposedly she had her gallbladder removed. Supposedly, because she went to the hospital. She stayed there for 2 weeks because they apparently opened her up and took her gallbladder away. And when it was finally found out that it was cancer, the reason they found out that it was cancer is because she went to another hospital. The physician at that hospital, she told the physician at that hospital, "Hey, I just had my gallbladder removed, but the pain is still there." And they did X-rays, they did their studies, and the physician comes back and says, "Miss Perez, you still have your gallbladder." "What do you mean I still have my gallbladder? They told me they removed it." And so they opened her up to find out why the X-rays were showing that she had her gallbladder when she had proof that they had removed it. And it turned out that what happened was the first doctor opened her up, saw that it was cancer, stitched her back up, and didn't say anything. And so by the time, I'm sorry, I'm going to get emotional, but by the time the second doctor found out, it was already too late. The cancer had already been oxygenated and it had already spread. So there was no chance my mother could have survived it. The medicine that she was given, mind you, my mother worked for the school district. My mother had really good insurance. And this was back in 2006. For those of you that say Democrats, Democrats this, Democrats that, that was Republican George W. Bush. 1 month supply of her medication with insurance was $2,000. I went to Mexico, right across the border. We lived 35 minutes away. 1 month supply of that medication without insurance, $35. So one of the biggest reasons that I feel we as minorities aren't getting the equal medical treatment is because we simply can't afford it. The way that the United States medical system is structured is it's structured so that these medical companies, these pharmaceutical companies, can charge whatever they want to for their services. And when that's the structure that we have, it really isn't convenient, like to some doctors, to diagnose their patients with certain ailments. Because if I diagnose you with that ailment, you're not going to be able to afford your medication, so you're just going to go home and die. Versus if I diagnose you with something that you can afford, at least until you die, I can be charging you that medication. It's sad to say that's the way it is, but it is. And with that doctor that did that to my mother, he still charged her insurance for removing her gallbladder, even though he didn't. He still charged her for the treatment that she was given at the recovery that she was given at the hospital, even though the reality was that she was still feeling sick, not because she was recovering, but because she still had her ailment, the cancer.
And that's just one example of many people who have gone through the same things. And it's never easy to hear somebody talk about something like that. And the fact that it does happen, it should be more concerning to more people, especially this day and age, because I lost my mom in 2006, and she as well had cancer. I didn't know. She fought it as long as she could. I was in the military at the time, and and I found out, just like maybe a few days before my first deployment. So, I mean, so within these communities, I think there should be some sort of ability for people people that are minorities to be able to have access to adequate care, to have access to physicians who look at the patient first and not so worried about how much their paycheck's going to be or anything of that sort. And the fact that here's my question: we have what 20 something states that jumped on a voting ban in months after one person said that the election was stolen from him. 20 something states. I'm probably thinking it's like 30 something states by now that say that, what, we need to make changes to our voting laws, but yet people are still homeless. People are still not able to get adequate health care. People are hungry. Kids don't have access to supplies for school. Teachers have to purchase their own supplies to teach their students. But we have to make sure that voting is fair and balanced, right? So by denying people the access to voting, you can't vote for people to come in and make changes that are needed like this, which is why they are so adamant about making sure to suppress your vote. This is why we say all the time, your voice matters. Do not let them shut you up. This is exactly what they're doing. They're doing the same thing that they did to Odie's people, that they did to my people, and they're doing it now to us. They do it every generation. They try to suppress your voice, and every generation goes through it. And this is the way they're trying to stop our voice in our generation, by suppressing our ability to go and vote. Use your voices. We have congressmen and senators for a reason. If you don't have access to their phone numbers, I will post it in the link below on how you can get in contact with your senators and your senators and your congressmen, so that they can make these laws to make it not so much about what's going to help a political party, but what's going to really help the people that voted them in, that said, you know what, we're going to represent you in Washington and make sure that you get the things in your communities that you need. And yet still, we don't. We don't have them. We're still waiting for these things to happen, and they're not happening. So this is the time when we need to stand up as a united nation of peoples. Stop this back and forth, who did this and who leads this, and think about things about the color of people's skin, their gender, their sexual orientation. None of that matters. People are dying because they don't have the adequate needs to everyday items, such as healthcare and food and education. Everything else doesn't matter until we get all of that taken care of. That's the important thing. That's what we need to keep our focus on. And that is what these political people are trying to keep us from doing. They're trying to keep us divided so that we can take our mind off of what we need in the community and focus on the left or what the right is doing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Because at the same time, while we are sitting there bickering with each other, they're making more money to line their pockets, while they can continue to make excuses of, well, Texas, we did say that you guys needed a power grid, but we were distracted because Black Lives Matter were protesting. If you get to the bottom line of what the people want, the protests will go away. People will do what they need to do. But it's the fact that these things are continuing to happen and it's continuing to be ignored generation after generation, decade after decade, day after day, month after month, year after year. And it's still going on. It's still happening today. It still has no resolution. We shouldn't be talking about the same things today that Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X was talking about, that Sitting Bull and these other people were talking about. Yeah, she's sitting there. We're talking about today. Why is it that we're 200 and something years later and talking about the exact same shit? Because people who we elect don't represent us the way we need to be represented. It's time for us to stand up and take our voices to them. Use your voices. We don't need rioting. We don't need looting. We can protest all day long. Protest, yes. Get on the streets and protest. That's your right. That is your right. And if you do it peacefully, and you don't give them a reason to come out in force, we can get a lot further. Are we saying that it's not going to happen and they're not going to go out in force? Of course they are. Because they don't want us to speak. They want to shut us up. It happened in the 60s, it happened in the 70s, and it happened in the 80s, and it happened in the 90s when everybody protested. They always do that. They want to shut us up. They want us to give us the bare minimum so we can go on and be like, okay, everything's good. No, it's not. It's not. Because I'm sick of every day waking up wondering if I'm going to get pulled over and that routine traffic stop is going to end with me having a bullet in me somewhere. I'm sick of worrying about what I got to explain to my kids why I'm going through these things. I'm sick of having to wake up and explain, having to think about the day I have to explain, sit down and explain to my kids, this is what you have to do when a cop pulls you over. This is what you have to say. This is what you do. You don't do this, you don't do this, and you don't do this, and you don't say this. That is not what I want to raise my kids to do. I want my kids to be able to walk outside, express their minds in a peaceful and calm way, but at the same time understand that, you know what, it's okay to be agitated. It's okay to be upset. It's okay, but that shouldn't be a reason why my kid gets picked up, slammed on the ground, or shot. That shouldn't be a reason why I gets picked up, slammed on the ground, or shot. Shouldn't be a reason that Odie gets picked up, slammed on the ground, and shot. We have constitutional rights for a reason. And these law enforcement officers are taking it upon themselves to twist the Constitution to make it fit them. I'm going to say this again. It's probably like the third or fourth week in a row that I said it, but Odie made this point week one. Who do you protect and serve? And without those people, would you have a fucking job? You will not. Because the people that you're harming every day in these communities are the people that you need to have a job. The people that you're shooting in these neighborhoods are the people whose taxes pay your salary. So let's start using common sense and realizing that we are people. We are people. We get agitated, we get angry, we get frustrated, just like anybody else. But at the same time, on the other side of that coin, we have fear, we have anxiety, we have all these other emotions that everyone else has. So when I'm having a bad day, just like any other person has a bad day, that should not be a reason where you pull me out of my car and slam me in my face because I'm not cooperating. That's not it. That's not it. That's not a good answer. So my last question, Odie, speaking on that, when you talked earlier about the topic of the doctors are saying that they have that African Americans feel less pain or feel no pain. Do you think that there's a reason why that cops use that same reason as a reason to use excessive force?
I do. I think that you know that mentality is passed down by how they are taught by still society. I mean, if we look at society right now, and you know what, I'm not even gonna say I'm not guilty of it either. We do the same thing to each other. We still have that mentality. I remember years ago, I used to go play basketball with a group of friends. Love these guys. They were from all over the place, but a couple of them were black, and we always used to laugh at, or not laugh, but joke around with one of our friends that he wasn't the best at basketball. And the joke we used to do was, man, how could you be, a tall black man and not be good at basketball? And but it's those same ideas, and I'm calling myself out on that. I was a kid. I didn't know any better, but it's those same ideas that cause these issues today. When you have this mentality that, oh, because most athletes, or because they were used as slaves and they were treated this horrible way, they have to be able to tolerate more pain. And you still have people that are teaching that way, that mindset, then of course it's going to be something that results in aggression. When the police are taught, I think, I can't remember what comedian it was that said this. I think it might have been Chris Rock. I don't remember if it was Chris Rock or if it was before Chris Rock. It might have been Richard Pryor. Honestly, I think it was Richard Pryor that said, police have to use. He was talking about police dogs, and he was saying police dogs chase an average African American, and they're exhausted. They'd rather chase the white criminals than the African American criminals. And this is an African American comedian. This is a black comedian, but it's those same jokes that perpetuate this idea that, because you're a certain race, you have more strength, you have more durability, you have more rage. And when you have that mindset going into any field, going into the medical field, going into law enforcement, going into education, if you have that mindset of, oh, if you're a certain race, you must automatically be smarter than someone else's race, then of course you're going to treat people differently. Of course you're going to react to situations differently, because that's the mindset you've already created. When the reality is, we should look at each other as equal, what we keep saying. We don't want to be behind you. We don't want to be in front of you. We want to be right next to you, because we are equal. The reality is that we've got, basketball players from every race. We've got scientists of every race. We've got doctors of every race, because we are equal. And my potential should not be dictated, should not be limited by the color of my skin. And my treatment at any point in any interaction with anyone that has some type of authority should not be dictated by the color of my skin. One of the things that irritates me the most is when I use 4-syllable words with someone, and they look at me and say, they might not say anything, but just the way they look at me, kind of like saying, oh wow, look at this Mexican that knows those eloquent words. I've actually had people that, simply because I use a word, I had one person that hated me, tried to make my life impossible at work, tried to get me fired numerous times at work, just because I used the word hyperbole. And I don't even consider hyperbole that impressive of a word. But the fact that I used hyperbole with her, and she's not of my race, made her automatically feel that I was condescending to her. That made her feel like I deserved to get fired, and I didn't deserve the job that I had. It's those preconceptions that we feed each other, that we feed our children, that unfortunately lead us to the point where we're at right now, where we're trying to get rid of them by getting rid of cartoon characters.
Absolutely. Like I said before, I don't think canceling the character is an idea, because the character didn't create itself. You know what I mean? You can change a character. You can change what a character does, says, and looks like. But the mindset of the person behind it has to be the one that changes. You know, but whatever. My final talking point on this is there are still disparities going on in different neighborhoods. There are still unequal treatment going on in different communities, and I don't just mean people of color. I mean, there are white that are poor, that need clean water, food, education for their children as well. I include them in it as well. That everyone deserves the same amount of treatment, despite your color, creed, gender, religious preference. It is what it is. But when you come to a country that says it's the land of the free and the home of the brave, you should expect people, especially when the first three words of the Constitution, again, which we're struggling, start with "we, the people." Now, we all know that when the Constitution was written, it did not give the first damn about people that look like me and Odie, but it's in there. And you're saying that every man was created equal and every man should have everything equally. So we are now taking what you wrote and using it against you. So now we want everything that we're asking for. We want everything that we're due, because we're human. We didn't ask for any of this. We didn't ask for our ancestors to be brought over in ships. He didn't ask for his ancestors to be completely slaughtered and made to move out west. That's not his fault. So don't blame us for things that have nothing to do with us. But by shutting us out and not giving us just what we just deserve, like everyone else. My right to vote, my right to go out and have fun with my family, my right to carry my firearm should be just as protected and looked at just like it would be anyone in any other race. Odie shouldn't have to worry about his family and getting profiled and pulled over with his wife, asking his wife if she's okay. That's not cool. I mean, that's his wife. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure Miss Pettis can handle herself. She's a tough little cookie. You know what I mean? So, I mean that no one should have to endure these things in their own communities, in any other community as well. Speaking on, we've seen several videos and talked several times about how people have gone into other neighborhoods and they're stopped and harassed by people in the neighborhood and law enforcement just for, we don't know you don't belong here. No, like, why? This is a free country. I'm going to go wherever I want. I can go wherever I want because I'm a free man. I don't need your permission to go and enter any place or any community. If I feel like looking around, because I like going around sometimes looking at houses, and because I'm in the process of trying to buy a house myself, so I want to look at different designs and other things like that, because after we buy this one and build up our equity, I really want to save up money to have my own house built. So I like to go around to other neighborhoods, get different architectural designs, and get ideas for what I want for my home. And lastly, going back to what Odie was saying about how people will judge people by how they speak. I know I said in week one that a lot of times people will hear me talk over the phone, and when they meet me in person, they're like, whoa. And they'll tell me to my face, someone will be like, oh, I thought you were white. Because I enunciate my words and don't use slang. I'm sorry, because when I'm in a professional environment, I speak professionally. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong. My South Georgia will come out. But for the most part, if I'm having an interaction with a person, I'm going to speak respectfully. I'm going to speak like how I would want to be spoken to. But the way I speak to someone in a professional setting, the way I would probably speak to Odie outside of this would probably be a little different. It has nothing to do with me, trying to be a chameleon, as people would say. That's not it. I just know how to articulate my words, and I know when it's best to use those words and when not to. So I understand and can identify with that one as well. So we're going on to the next subject here. I know this is gonna make Odie's day. So back in January, we all know what happened on January 6th. He's already shaking his head. We all know what happened on January 6th. A group of people, we don't know who these group of people are, decided that they didn't like the results that states were certifying in the election, and they were going to go talk to people about it. And they weren't going to do it outside of the law. They decided to take it all the way inside the building. A locked building, a closed, locked federal building at that. They decided to make their own entryways, and after they made entry into these buildings, they decided that not only were they going to halt a democratic process, but we were going to hunt down the people that were re-elected to certify this democratic process, and we're going to potentially do them harm. I don't know why I use potentially, but we all know why. We all know what their goal was. They were hunting people down inside of a building with zip ties, and they erected a gallows outside on the lawn of the Capitol. So I don't feel like this was anything other than a coup d'etat. We all know it. Everybody knows it. So during this failed coup d'etat, this woman decided that she was going to enter through a door in which was broken into and barricaded by Capitol Police, and they were protecting U.S. congressmen and senators. So this angry mob decided that they were going to try to break this door into this chamber to get to these people. And this woman decided that she was going to hop through that window or through that door, and she ends up getting shot. To those that know me, you know that I will try to be as respectful as possible. I'm very direct. You entered a closed, locked federal building, and you tried to enter a room filled with congressmen and senators that were being hunted down, and you got shot. I mean, I say the guy did his job. Because who's to say what would have happened if you or anyone else in that angry mob got into that building where those people were. So now, Odie, the family of Miss Ashli Babbitt are planning to sue the Capitol police officer that shot and killed her. I just want to hear what you have to say about it.
Oh man, yeah. So I'm going to start off by just because I know that you said something, and it's happened to me too. People that say, "Oh, that wasn't a coup d'état," just so that everybody understands the definition of it. The Webster's definition of coup d'état is a sudden, violent, and illegal attempt at seizure at power from a government. Was it sudden? Yeah. Was there violence? Yeah. Was it an attempt to seize power? Yeah. So does it meet all the requirements of the coup d'état? Of course it does. Oh, and was it illegal? Yeah, it was illegal. So it meets every requirement of coup d'état. For those of you that that still claim it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know what universe you're living in, but it's sure as heck ain't this one. With that said, I mean, look, I'm gonna give it to you this way. Few years ago, I think by now people are starting to realize that I love to prove points by giving examples. A few years ago, I was going to serve in the jury for a civil case. This case involved the death of these two men. They had gone fishing and got drunk on the boat, were horseplaying on the boat. The boat tipped over and they drowned. And the two families, the families of these men, were suing the boat company, saying the boat the boat was unsafe, and there was no warning that the boat could tip over and drown. And I'll never forget that right before the case started, I had already been selected as a juror, but right before the case started, the judge told us what the case was going to be about and asked, "Is there anybody in the jury that you cannot view this case objectively? So because you cannot view it objectively, you feel like you cannot, serve." And I raised my hand, and the judge says, "Mr. Perez, why? Why is it that you cannot serve objectively in this case?" And I said, "Well, Your Honor, there's an old song. The song goes, 'Rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby. Rock the boat, you'll tip the boat over.' And in my opinion, Your Honor, if there's a song that says a boat can tip over if you're rocking it, then how is it the boat company's fault that this happened? I'm sorry, but there's nothing that these families' lawyer can tell me that's gonna make me blame the company that made the boat if their sons rocked it, tipped it, and drowned." And the judge said, "Mr. Perez, you're excused. You do not have to serve as part of the jury." That's kind of what's going on right now with the situation. It's not a George Floyd situation. George Floyd didn't go to the police department and start trying to break in. It's not a Breonna Taylor situation where, she didn't she didn't go to the police department and start trying to attack them and yell at them and berate them. This lady did. Babbitt went willingly. She joined the aggressors willingly. She was seen right before she got shot trying to gain entrance to a government building illegally, willingly. No one was holding a gun to her head. No one was forcing her. She tweeted about what she was going to do before she did it. So the fact that I feel bad for her parents. And do they have the right to sue? They do. This country gives you the right to sue for whatever the heck you feel like it, unfortunately. But should they? No. The police officer was doing his job, and their daughter was part of a failed coup d'etat. And is it sad that they will never see their daughter again? Yes. Whose fault is it? Their daughters.
I agree. Like Odie said, you can't expect to be aggressive towards something, and then when aggression is used back, claim to be the victim. It's a long, tried and true story in this country that I'm just going to be direct about it. Whites in this country will continue to do things and be the aggressors, and it will continue to be the forerunners in how the aggression starts. But when aggression is put back, when they give it back, when other people give it back, and they're pushing the aggression back to you, all of a sudden you're the victim. And that is something that always been seen going like he George Floyd. Their children was trying to claim to be the victim, saying, "Oh, he's a large dude. He was a big guy. I had to subdue him." He was handcuffed. If you had EMS on the way, just sit him up, let him sit. If he's gonna flail and kick, okay. How much harm is he gonna do to you? He's handcuffed. And all the man was doing was asking for you to get up and so he can sit up. When you took him out of the car, the first thing he said was, "Thank you." What aggressive ass person is gonna thank someone for giving them what they asked for? Like, I don't understand that. He asked to get out of the car. You got him out of the car. He says thank you. And your next thing is, "Oh, he's so aggressive for saying thank you. Let's get him on the ground and hold him down for 10 minutes. And then you have the bewildered look on your face when they read a unanimous guilty verdict. He didn't understand. He literally was like, "What? I'm guilty?" He was shocked. He was really shocked. Like, dude, you're really shocked? Like, this is what Odie was saying last week. It's they feel like they have that authority. And when you defy their perceived authority, then you're a threat. I'm gonna say it again. They feel like they have this authority. And when you go against their perceived authority, you're a threat. Doesn't matter at that point. They will use any tactic, any right wobble to slander who you are as a person in order to make them look good, give them a justification. Like Odie spoke about a couple episodes ago. You know, you have the Native Americans who came to help. These people would have starved and froze to death if it wasn't for the Native Americans. And then all of a sudden, they get out their help from them, get all they need from them, and then poof, all right, we're done with you. You're no good to us anymore. Now you're in our way. And now, a good majority of this civilization who was on this continent well before anyone else is wiped out at the arrogance that these people have. Because they came in the authority of King of England. We're going to take this land in the authority of the King of England. And the Native Americans were kind of like, we're here first, bro. You're kind of here first. So what authority do you have over us? Oh, they're challenging our authority. Gotta wipe them out. How do you not see how that's the same as what's going on today? When a person of color challenges a law enforcement officer, what happens 9 times out of 10? They're getting pulled out of a car and they're getting arrested because they are failing to cooperate. Like Odie said, when you have a system that has been ingrained in this country to where white people feel like they have the authority over any other minority of color, person of color, that doesn't go away overnight. You got to understand, for 400 years, that was law in this country. For 400 years, that was law, that whites were over blacks, Hispanics. They were over everyone. And they did whatever they had to do in order to keep that so. And you think that just because a few laws got passed and everything else that goes away? No. Like I keep saying, it's the same concept. It's just in a prettier bow to try to throw you off of, well, it's not bad, but it's better. No. We don't want better. We want equality. And until we get that, we are not going to go quietly. We're not. And instances like this are just another example of white privilege. So to those that tell me that this shit ain't real, look at this. This family is really suing for $10 million because she broke the law. She was with an agitated mob that was going to go harm people who make our laws. But she was shot because that was that guy's job, to protect those people inside that building.
This reminds me of years ago. There was a crook, a thief, that was breaking into a person's house through their sunroof. He fell, landed on a table, broke his leg, and was there for the whole weekend until the family came back from their little mini vacation on the weekend. They called the ambulance. The ambulance picked them up, and the thief sued the family. This reminds me of that. She's a crook trying to break into the sacred grounds of the country. Gets, injured. Death is an injury, I guess. And now her family is suing for her misdeeds. I'm hoping. I'm still hoping that it gets dismissed. Should it get dismissed? Hands down, hell yeah. There shouldn't be any doubt that about that. But we
Yeah, I don't see a reason why they should entertain it. The fact that it's actually gotten this kind of attention is just ridiculous. Again, I'm not in any way celebrating this woman getting shot and killed. I think it's stupid. It could have been avoided, definitely could have been avoided. But playing the victim, she's not the victim in this case. She's not. Again, I hope this family finds closure in some way, but this isn't going to be it. You can't blame the person doing his job protecting other lives from the mob that she was a part of, and expect people to feel bad. Like, how bad would you feel if I ran into the police station and started shooting people, and then I get shot, and then my family wants to sue the police for shooting me? That makes absolutely no sense. It's like me taking someone's wife hostage, putting a gun to her head, and then I get shot in the process, and then my family wants to sue about it. That's not how it works. You know what I mean? So, again, I hope this family finds closure, but this isn't going to be it. This is not the way to do it. Again, like Odie said, I hope that the justice system doesn't even entertain this at all, because we've all had some sort of experiences with unfair treatment. We know what it's like to have unfair treatment, and we don't get the accountability that we deserve. We don't get the compensation that we deserve. We don't get so much as an apology. It's more than likely like it happened, and the fact that this woman's family feel like they are owed in this situation, when people that look like me still don't have the ability to own land, own homes, have their own businesses. People like Odie, work hard every day to provide for his family, and having to make time to do this, that, and the third. And this woman's family feels like they have the authority, the right to come about and say, my daughter was doing something bad and she was shot for it, and we're going to sue that person for that. If that is not the, if white privilege had a face, it would be her. Because that is the most atrocious thing I've ever heard in my life. You're going to sue the Capitol Police officer for doing his job, keeping her from attacking the people that were inside this chamber that he was protecting. It doesn't get any more white privilege than that.
And you're right. It shows the mindset that some people have, and we keep saying this. But the reason we keep saying this is because we keep getting told this. Racism doesn't exist, and y'all are making it seem worse than it is. But this is the best example. I mean, if this example doesn't tell you that white privilege is real, then I don't know what else will. We were talking about, and I don't know if you have anything else to say about the subject, but one thing that we wanted to do, I've been asking a few weeks, and I think what we wanted to do is to encourage others to tell their stories, to use their voice. Is one thing that we wanted to do was share our experience, and so I wanted to start off today, or the next point would be, since we're talking about white privilege, since we're talking about how there is this difference, is our own experience with racism. Mike just said we have to deal with it every day. We have to deal with all of this stuff, and there's no reprieve for us. So I wanted to bring out to those that say that don't exist what our first experience with racism is, and when it started. When we started seeing the difference. Mike, do you want to get into that? Do you have anything else to say about that, the case or this lawsuit?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I said what I had to say about it, and, I mean, I have to be nicer since I'm on camera representing my family. So all I can say to the Babbitt family is good luck. But answering your question about experiences, to anybody that knows me personally, they know that I am from South Georgia, and I could go all day about the things that I've seen, about the things I've heard, but the earliest memory of my experiences, I'm gonna give you two examples, Odie, if you don't mind. But my first one, I remember when I was just in elementary school, and the teacher was passing around different papers. You know how the first day of school goes. And I remember looking at this paper and reading my name, making sure my name was correct, my date of birth was correct. And then I get to my race, and it doesn't say black, it doesn't say African American, it literally says Negro. And I'm looking at this in I'm in like first grade in elementary school, and I'm looking at this and I'm looking around like I'm deeply offended by this, because Negro is a color. It isn't a race. It's a color. I'm not a color. I'm a person. And me realizing this as a kid, I broke down. I started crying. And I was like, why is my teacher not seeing me as a person? I'm not a person. I'm a color to her. Like, I don't understand. I took this home, and that's when my parents, my family, first had this talk with me of how my life was going to be different because of the color of my skin. And mind you, I'm in elementary school, and I'm having this conversation with my mother and my grandmother. And I remember just crying and like, wow, like this is really how they see me. I'm not a person, I'm a color. And from that point forward, I did start to notice the differences in kids that looked like me and kids that didn't look like me. and how kids that didn't look like me got more help from teachers than kids that looked like me. And as I got older, I realized that the kids that looked like me were getting in trouble a lot more than kids that didn't look like me. And so it kind of put me into this weird space of like, I had to literally ask myself, was it okay for me to have white friends? Was it okay for me to hang out with other social ethnic groups? And I struggled with that my first few years of school. Like, I literally hung out with myself because I didn't know who, or my sister, because I didn't know who I could really hang out with. And I do remember this one kid when I was in elementary school who hated me for no reason. He used to always tell me things like, "Oh, you think you're cool, or you think you're better than us." I'm like, dude, I don't even know you. Like, why are you talking to me? But, as you get older, you start to realize that these things happen. And my second experience happened while I was in high school. There was literally a race war at my high school. I've told my wife about it, and she's like, "Wait, what?" Like, I'm like, "Yes." There was white people versus black people, and it got pretty hairy. My high school, we wanted to have an integrated prom, which I know some people are looking at us like, "What?" Yeah, we were still having segregated proms in 2005. We made our school like say, "Look, we're either going to have an integrated prom or we're going to just stop coming to school." And so we eventually got it, but we had three proms. We had an integrated prom, then we had a black prom and a white prom. There was three different proms in 2005 in my high school. So, so when I say that racism isn't new to me, it's not. I've experienced it all my life. And I know Will Smith said something similar to what I'm about to say, but racism isn't new. It's just more people have phones now. It's being filmed. It's being put out there. People are able to see it. I'm not saying that they're actually seeing it. They have the access to see it now. Because everybody has their phones. Everybody has a camera nowadays. And so these interactions are getting recorded. They're getting uploaded on social media, and social media is everywhere, and everyone has them. So that's it. But what about you? What was your earliest memory, or what was your first experience that you could recall?
So before I give my first experience, I just want to, like, I know you said it twice, but I want to bring out I want to say, listen to that, guys. A segregated prom 2005, less than 20 years ago. Those of you that still tell us racism isn't there, segregated prom 2005. That's insane. I had never talked to you about that. It's funny. We had our first experience with racism around the same time. My first experience with racism was in third grade. In second grade, my favorite, well, not my favorite cousin, but he's like a big brother to me. My big brother Albert introduced me to hip hop. While we were hanging out, he played California Love by Tupac. And that was the first, instance of hip hop to me. And I fell in love with it. To me, Tupac was a person that had a lot of political, social in his music. And so his music spoke to me. And I'll never forget, in third grade, we were on recess. We were in the playground, and I had my little Walkman with a Tupac CD. I can't remember which one it was. I want to say it was All Eyes on Me. And one of the teachers heard the music, even though I was playing it in my headphones. I guess I had it really loud, and he took the headphones away from me, took the Walkman away from me, and says, "Why are you listening to this monkey music?" And at first, I I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get it. At first, I thought he was talking about the language that was in it, and it wasn't until after recess that I got to the class that I realized what he was saying was, "Why are you listening to music from Black people?" And the way he referred to them, like I remember that day, it weighed on me really hard that someone could look at somebody that's a human being and refer to them as a beast and refer to them as a lower being. Here is a human being. I mean, Tupac may have had his flaws, but here's a human being that's trying to help his people, that's trying to better his people. That whether he's doing it, people say, "Oh, he was violent and he used bad words." He used what was given to him. He took the image that white people, that the politicians of the times gave him. He took the word thug and owned it and used it to give his people a way out. And for someone to call him a monkey, it was extremely difficult to me for me to swallow. And I'll give a second experience too. The second experience isn't actually mine, but it was really what led me to want to do something about racism, because it was so unfair. And it happened to this kid that I knew. He grew up here in the valley with me. He would go to our church. I won't say his name because I don't ever want to put him on blast or anything. But he ended up moving away, and when he moved away, he went to a school where there was a racist teacher. The teacher was the teacher for woodshop, and what happened to him was that the teacher kept being racist. Teacher kept calling him derogatory terms in front of the whole class. And eventually this kid snapped. What happened is the teacher grabbed his arm and was putting his hand close to a table saw, and was telling him, I could chop your hand off right now and no one would do anything to me. And this kid in sixth grade is freaking out because his hand is getting put close to the saw, and the white teacher's threatening to saw his hand off, and he grabs a 2x4 and smacks the teacher on the face with a 2x4, breaking his nose. Teacher was allowed to keep his job. He was put on a 2-week with pay suspension and was brought back. He went to a school for troubled children. By the time he got out, by the time I saw him again, his grandparents, who were his guardians, had sent him back down to the valley to see if he'd get better because he had joined gangs, he had started doing drugs, and he had completely messed up his life. Unfortunately, I lost touch with him in the mid 2000s. So I don't know. He went back to Illinois, and I never knew what happened to him. I never heard from him again. But by that time, he had been deemed a criminal. This was a kid that in elementary was a straight A student. This is a kid that here in the Valley was a straight A student, was a smart child, and his life was taken away. He was labeled a criminal and a drug fiend because one racist took his potential away. For those that say that racism does not exist, for those that claim, that's why I always say, when they come to me and say, well, George Floyd was a criminal, he'd been arrested before, so and so had a charge, all these Mexicans coming over are rapists. For those that say things like that, That is the mentality, that is the image, and we've said this before, that has been given to us. How do you expect them not to live up to it? This person, this kid, was believed what the racist told him, believed that he was worthless, believed after the white teacher was able to get away with almost cutting his hand off, or at least threatening to cut his hand off, was able to get away scot free. So his only option at that point was to be what they told him to be. Those are probably my first two experiences with racism, and I want to point that out to everybody. Mr. Mike's first experience was in first grade. My first experience was in third grade. They start young, guys. These concepts of trying to keep us down, of trying to put us down, start when we're really young. Imagine if I had listened to the teacher in third grade. Imagine if I had heard him, because he didn't just say that. He started telling me, why the black people were bad, and why I shouldn't listen to that music, and why I should stick to my own. Imagine if I had listened to that. He would have started a little racist growing up. That's the problem with it. They want to take God away from schools, and you know what? I'm not saying they shouldn't. The example that I want to give is they want to take something like God away from schools and prayer away from schools, but we're still perfectly fine with our educators being racist. and that's where it needs to be gone. That's where it needs to get gone. For those, the American, what was it? Our previous president wanted to put in books, school books, that removed negative things from it because we didn't want to make America look bad. That's how they're trying to keep racism alive. If you're not taught the history of our world, of our country, if you're not taught how racism is ingrained in its origin, then how can we ever get rid of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I've said before, we can't learn from, we need to learn from past experiences so that we know how to dwell and deal with it in the future. And this is truly something we've been talking about since week one, and we're going to continue to talk about it until we achieve our goal, which is, having these open dialogues with people who disagree with us and hopefully coming up to some sort of resolution. But I have a question by one of our viewers, Odie. Let's see if we can answer this one for her. This one's from Rosemary Cavazos. One of her questions is, we were talking about the Ashli Babbitt story. Her question is, what makes them think that she's different from the black and brown people who died protesting? Why do they think that it's okay to kill people over property in a riot, but not okay to shoot an attacker during an invasion?
Really good question, Miss Rosemary. Thank you so much. First of all, we appreciate that guys get involved and ask us these questions that help us get our dialogue out. So the reality is it goes back to perspective. We've spoken about perspective before, and how the way you label, the label you give something, the name you give something, carries meaning. You keep hearing these news anchors, these politicians say they weren't. It wasn't a coup d'etat. It wasn't an insurrection. It wasn't an attack on our country. So they are seen as righteous and doing what they believed was right. And then we go turn around and look at the labels that are given to protesters, where they call them these animals, these rioters, these people that only want to harm our nation, and that gives them justification. By giving us a label, they're removing our right to do the same thing that they're trying to do, which is change the country. And that's what we need to fight against. We need to make sure that we don't buy into the labels that we are given. I spoke about this kid earlier whose life was ruined. The same things have happened to me. The same things have happened to Mike. I remember in high school, when I told a teacher I wanted to be a doctor, she laughed at me, and she said that I should have a more attainable dream, that I wouldn't be able to be a doctor. And I mean, sadly, eventually she was right. Life took me off of that path, but I didn't give up. You know, that made me work harder. That made me take more AP classes. That made me work towards my scholarship, which I earned. And I'll never forget that day that I graduated, that I got my scholarship, when I handed it to my mother. And I'll never forget the words that my mother told me. I worked my rear end off to get that scholarship, and when it was in my hand, I gave it to my mom, and I said, "Mom, this is for you. This is for you, because I want you to be proud of me." And she handed it back to me, and she said, "No, it's not for me. Don't you ever do anything in this world for anybody but you. This was for you, mijo. This was for you, son." And that's exactly what we need to do. As minorities, as someone that has not been given that white privilege, we cannot allow the labels that they're giving us to dictate how we look at each other, and ultimately what actions we take. And we need to understand that when we use our voice, we're using it for us, so that those that I love and those that are like me can have the same opportunities and can have the same experiences as those that aren't like me.
Absolutely. And going back to what you were saying about, having a teacher shoot down your dreams, basically. I remember for the longest time, because growing up for me, I enjoyed helping people. I love to help people. I always had this passion to help other people. I didn't ever like to enjoy watching other people suffer or have or go without. I wanted everyone to have, just as, everyone else should. So my dream as a kid, I wanted to be a police officer, because I wanted to serve my community and make everything better and provide safety for everyone in my community. And I had a teacher in elementary school tell me that I had a better odds on being on the other end of being a police officer than being a police officer. And so, again, like Odie said, these things start when we're younger, because if you can break down the mind when it's already young, then it's not going to be hard to do whatever you want to the adult, because their mind's already shut down and broken. But to answer the question of Ms. Rosemary, what makes them think that she's better than those of us that protest? The color of her skin. It's white privilege. It's white privilege. I'm just going to say it straight out. It's white privilege. Like I said before, there's no other reason why this person who did something wrong has her family thinks that they have the right to go out and say that this shouldn't have happened to my child. What did you think was going to happen? Did you want her to come on in and start harming people with along with the rest of the people that she was bringing in? No. I mean, action had to be taken, and she was a part of the action. So I don't think that I don't think, like Ms. Roseberry said, I don't think it's any difference in this. A person who is breaking into a federal building, holding a democratic process, being stopped by a mob of people who were coming to do these people either great bodily harm or death, than someone breaking a window to a shopping mall. I just thought that that's ridiculous. Because if let's say in my instance, if I come home and someone's running out my backyard with my TV and I shoot them, I go to jail. Because despite the fact that they're running away with my property, I cannot shoot someone running away. You know what I mean? And over a TV, I have insurance. I can get another one. You know, I can replace property. Property I can replace. A TV I can replace, but I cannot replace a life. No way you can replace a life. And I have to think, and these are things that we're taught as gun owners, is what you're getting ready to shoot for worth a life. And to those that say, oh yeah, my TV, good, that's showing that your mind is showing that monetary value is more important than a life. I carry my weapon with me all the time, but I carry my weapon in condition 3, which is with the magazine in but no round in the chamber. I do that for the person, whoever comes up on me, to have the opportunity. I give you the opportunity to reevaluate the situation, because if you give me the opportunity to go ahead and make it into condition and put one in the chamber, then we don't have some real problems after that point. So, you know, I don't necessarily want to take a life. I spent 5 years in the Marines. I've seen what weapons can do to people in all forms and all assets. I'm not jumping in line to take another life. I'm not jumping in line to want to endanger someone's life. I'm not doing that. I've been there and I've done that. And a life is important. I've again seen enough of it. I've seen too much already. And lives are very important. And I truly wish everyone would value the same, that a life is important. And we need to also understand that with every life, they deserve equality. They deserve compassion. They deserve grace and love, just like everyone else does. So, again, I'm not saying that what happened to Miss Babbitt is something that I'm celebrating. No. It's tragic. It's very tragic. And the fact that it happened when it shouldn't have happened is tragic. You know, they always tell other people, trust the process, let the process work itself out. But then you get into these situations, and you know, all of a sudden now we want justice. No, that's not how it works. Why don't we start getting justice for those who are actually victims, who actually need someone to stand up for them and fight for the accountability that is needed on their side. We finally got some with George Floyd. Hopefully the domino or chain reaction of accountability continues in this country. But that's pretty much all I got for that. Oh, you got anything else you want to talk about?
No. I guess I'll say my last piece, just saying, again, as always, thank you all for listening and for participating, and keep this conversation going. Keep these talks going. The reality is that that's exactly what we're trying to do. We keep talking about using your voice, using your voice, using your voice. We're using our voice to hopefully get others to speak out, and get others to share their experiences, and get others to understand where we're coming from. Keep joining us, keep tuning in, keep sharing our videos, keep bringing attention to what needs to change, and most of all, keep hope alive. That together we can finally make this country great. Not again, just make it great.
Absolutely, because if you look at the history of this country's never been great. But Mike always said we can have these dialogues open up to to more people. We can have these dialogues, and we can hopefully bring change that this country desperately needs. Again, we want to thank everyone who continues to watch and support what we are doing here. Welcome anyone who's new. This is something that we're very, very passionate about. When I came to Odie 9 weeks ago with this project, he was on board immediately. I don't even think I got the full sentence out, and he was like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." Like, "Oh yeah." On air, I mean, I always thank him after every episode off air, but I want to do it formally on air. I want to say thank you so much, Odie, for doing this, agreeing to do this, and staying on this with me, because I'm just glad that we're able to get this dialogue started, and hopefully through us, we can encourage other people to have a dialogue as well. And also, with that, I just want to say that I did go ahead and start the Understanding Room Twitter page. I will post it in the comment link below. Feel free to come, ask your questions, leave your comments, and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Tune in next week. We should have another exciting episode. We should have some more history lessons for you guys. And like Odie said before, like we say every week, we don't want to stand in front of you. We don't want to stand behind you. We want to stand with you. So until next time, please continue to, be kind to each other, love each other, give each other grace and love, and also continue to understand each other.